4 years, Debbie Rowe remained one of the most mysterious figures in Michael Jackson's life. The woman who became the mother of Prince and Paris Jackson. The woman who stood beside the king of pop during one of the most turbulent periods of his life. And the woman who later disappeared almost completely from the spotlight. But now, years after Michael Jackson's passing, Debbie's words are once again attracting attention. And according to those who have followed the Jackson story closely, what she says paints a very different picture from the one many people think they know. While critics spent decades questioning Michael's personal life, Debbie consistently described a man who was obsessed with one dream above all else. Becoming a father. Not a superstar. Not a global icon. A father. According to Debbie, the happiest moments she ever witnessed were not on stage in front of thousands of screaming fans. They happened behind closed doors with his children. But Debbie's story is about far more than parenthood. It's about loyalty, sacrifice, heartbreak, and a friendship that survived scandals, media attacks, courtroom battles, and unimaginable tragedy. So why is Debbie Rowe speaking out again? What does she say the world got wrong about Michael Jackson? And why do many fans believe her testimony changes everything? Let's uncover the story behind one of the most misunderstood relationships in Michael Jackson's life. Let's uncover the story behind one of the most misunderstood relationships in Michael Jackson's life. Long before Debbie Rowe became a headline. Long before she became known as the mother of Prince and Paris Jackson. She was simply a nurse working in a Beverly Hills dermatology clinic. And according to Debbie's own recollections, that's where everything began. At that clinic, Michael Jackson wasn't the king of pop. He wasn't the world's biggest celebrity. He wasn't the man selling out stadiums across the globe. He was a patient. A man dealing with vitiligo, a condition that had become the subject of endless public speculation and misunderstanding. While millions of people thought they knew Michael Jackson through television screens and tabloid headlines, Debbie saw something different. She saw a person. Not a superstar. Not an icon. A person. According to the transcript, Debbie quickly became someone Michael trusted because she treated him normally. She wasn't impressed by fame. She wasn't interested in celebrity culture. And she wasn't intimidated by his global status. That may sound simple. But for Michael Jackson, it was incredibly rare. Imagine spending your entire life being treated differently. Every room you enter changes because you're there. Every conversation becomes cautious. Every friendship is questioned. Every relationship is analyzed. That was Michael's reality. From childhood onward, he rarely experienced normal human interaction. Yet according to Debbie, their friendship was built on exactly that. Normality. Trust. Humor. And honesty. Over time, the friendship grew stronger. Not because of romance initially, but because both people genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Debbie reportedly became one of the few people who could make Michael laugh when life became overwhelming. And life often became overwhelming. By the mid-1990s, Michael Jackson was facing enormous pressure. His career remained huge. His fame remained unmatched. But privately, he was struggling with personal disappointments and intense public scrutiny. Then came one of the most difficult periods of his personal life. His marriage to Lisa Marie Presley ended. The breakup became global news. And according to Debbie's account, Michael was devastated. Many people assumed the biggest concern in Michael's life was protecting his career. Debbie tells a different story. According to her, Michael's greatest fear was something far more personal. He feared never becoming a father. That's the detail that surprises many people. Because when people think of Michael Jackson, they often think about music. Records. Awards. Tours. History-making performances. But according to Debbie, none of those things meant as much to him as the idea of having children. And that's where the story takes an extraordinary turn. According to Debbie's own explanation, she believed some people were simply meant to be parents. Michael was one of them. She reportedly saw how deeply he wanted a family, how seriously he took the dream, and how much pain he felt thinking it might never happen. That's when she made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. She offered to help him become a father. To many outsiders, the decision seemed shocking, even impossible to understand. The media immediately began creating theories. Some claimed it was a business arrangement. Others claimed it was a publicity stunt. Others insisted there had to be some hidden motive. But Debbie has consistently rejected those interpretations. According to her, the decision was simple. She cared about Michael. She believed he would be a great father. And she wanted to help him achieve what he wanted most. Whether people agree with that explanation or not, one thing became clear. Their relationship was unlike almost anything the public had seen before. It didn't fit traditional expectations. It didn't fit Hollywood expectations. And it certainly didn't fit tabloid expectations. That uniqueness became one reason the media became obsessed with them. Every move was analyzed. Every statement was dissected. Every decision became a headline. Yet according to Debbie, the reality behind closed doors was much simpler than people imagined. A friendship, a shared goal, and a man desperate to become a father. Then came the moment that changed everything. The moment Debbie discovered she was pregnant. According to the transcript, she told Michael the news at a Los Angeles airport. His reaction was unforgettable. Debbie says Michael was overcome with excitement and joy. For him, this wasn't a publicity story. This wasn't a celebrity headline. This was the realization of a dream he had carried for years. A dream that was finally becoming reality. And according to Debbie, what happened next revealed the side of Michael Jackson the public almost never saw. Not the performer. Not the superstar. Not the icon. The future father. A side of Michael that would soon become the most important role of his entire life. A side of Michael that would soon become the most important role of his entire life. Because according to Debbie Rowe, everything changed the moment Michael realized he was finally going to become a father. For years, he had conquered almost every mountain imaginable. He had broken records. Sold hundreds of millions of albums. Performed before crowds larger than most artists could ever dream of. Yet none of those achievements filled the emotional space that fatherhood occupied in his heart. According to Debbie, that dream mattered more than fame itself. When she revealed the pregnancy news, Michael's reaction wasn't calm. It wasn't reserved. And it certainly wasn't the reaction of someone viewing the situation as a business arrangement. Debbie recalled pure excitement. Pure happiness. The kind of happiness that can't be rehearsed or faked. For perhaps the first time in years, Michael wasn't thinking about tours, albums, or headlines. He was thinking about becoming a dad. As the pregnancy progressed, Michael's enthusiasm only grew stronger. According to Debbie's account, he wanted to be involved in every possible way despite his demanding schedule. At the time, he was still one of the busiest entertainers on earth. International commitments constantly pulled him away. Concerts, meetings, promotional appearances. The demands never stopped. But even while traveling around the world, his focus kept returning to one thing. His future child. One story Debbie shared especially captured fans' attention. During the pregnancy, Michael reportedly recorded cassette tapes of himself speaking. Not singing. Not performing. Simply talking. Every night, Debbie would place headphones near her stomach so the unborn baby could hear Michael's voice. It's a small detail, but it's one that reveals a great deal about the kind of father Michael hoped to become. He wasn't waiting until the child was born to create a connection. He wanted that connection immediately, even before birth. To many fans, the image is incredibly touching. A man whose voice was known by millions trying to share that same voice with his future child. Not as a celebrity, as a father. Then came the day everything changed forever. The birth of Prince Jackson. For Michael, it represented something he had wanted for years. Something money couldn't buy. Something fame couldn't provide. Something no award could replace. Family. According to Debbie, watching Michael with his children transformed her understanding of him. The public knew Michael Jackson the entertainer. She knew Michael Jackson the father. And she says those were often two very different people. The performer was confident, energetic, larger than life. The father was gentle, protective, emotional, almost childlike in his happiness around his children. When Paris Jackson was born later, that happiness only deepened. Suddenly Michael wasn't just a father. He was the father of two children he adored. According to Debbie, watching him interact with Prince and Paris was unlike anything she had witnessed before. Many people spend years searching for purpose. Debbie believed Michael found his purpose the moment he became a parent. That's why she often became frustrated with media coverage. Because while headlines focused on controversies and rumors, she saw a man whose world revolved around his children. A man who wanted to give them the childhood he felt he never had. That goal became central to everything. Michael often spoke publicly about childhood, about imagination, about wonder. Critics sometimes misunderstood those comments. Supporters saw them differently. Debbie's recollections suggest that much of Michael's thinking was shaped by his own experiences growing up. He had spent his childhood working, performing, traveling, living under enormous pressure. Many fans believe he wanted something different for his children. Freedom, happiness, normal experiences. The things he often felt he missed. Yet while fatherhood brought joy, it also brought scrutiny. Because almost immediately the public began questioning everything. The marriage, the pregnancy, the family structure, the motives. Nothing was left alone. According to Debbie, that constant attention made life extremely difficult. Every decision became a news story. Every appearance generated speculation. Every family moment attracted photographers. For someone like Debbie, who never sought fame, the experience became overwhelming. Unlike Michael, she had never spent her life in the spotlight. She wasn't prepared for the constant media attention. She wasn't prepared for strangers analyzing her personal choices. And she certainly wasn't prepared for becoming a global headline. The pressure continued building, year after year, until eventually it became impossible to ignore. The marriage itself began struggling under the weight of that reality. According to the transcript, the relationship gradually reached a crossroads. Not because of hatred, not because of betrayal, but because the lifestyle surrounding Michael Jackson was unlike anything most people could endure. The world saw glamour, private jets, fame, success. Debbie saw something else. Endless attention, constant pressure, and a life that never truly belonged to the people living it. Eventually, the marriage came to an end. And when it did, a new chapter began. A chapter that would shock many people around the world. Because Debbie would soon make a decision that critics never understood. A decision involving Prince and Paris. A decision that generated enormous backlash. And a decision she would spend years explaining to the public. According to Debbie, however, there was one simple reason behind it all. Trust. A level of trust in Michael Jackson that few people fully understood. A level of trust in Michael Jackson that few people fully understood. Because when Debbie Rowe and Michael Jackson divorced in 1999, the public expected a bitter custody battle. After all, that's what usually happens in celebrity divorces. Arguments, court hearings, public accusations, years of legal conflict. But that's not what happened. Instead, Debbie made a decision that stunned almost everyone watching from the outside. She agreed that Michael would retain full custody of Prince and Paris. The reaction was immediate and brutal. Newspapers exploded with criticism. Television commentators questioned her motives. Talk shows debated her character. And strangers who knew nothing about her personal life suddenly felt qualified to judge her. Many accused her of abandoning her children. Others claimed no mother would willingly make such a choice. The criticism became relentless. But according to Debbie, those critics completely misunderstood the situation. In her view, the decision wasn't about walking away from her children. It was about honoring an arrangement she and Michael had understood from the very beginning. She repeatedly stated that Michael was the parent who had dreamed about fatherhood for years. Michael was the one whose entire world revolved around those children. And Michael was the person she trusted most to raise them. That explanation didn't satisfy everyone. In fact, it made many critics even angrier. People struggled to understand a family structure that didn't fit traditional expectations. The public wanted a simple story. A villain. A victim. A dramatic conflict. Instead, they were presented with something much more complicated. A relationship that operated according to its own rules. And Debbie refused to apologize for it. According to the transcript, she never viewed herself as fitting the traditional definition of motherhood. She openly acknowledged that from the beginning. To Debbie, giving birth and raising children were two different responsibilities. And she believed Michael was the person best equipped to provide the life Prince and Paris would need. Whether people agreed or disagreed, she remained remarkably consistent. Years passed. The criticism continued. But her explanation never changed. Then came another decision that generated even more controversy. In 2001, Debbie formally terminated her parental rights. Once again, headlines exploded. And once again, critics rushed to judgment. Many people saw only the legal documents. They saw the financial settlement. They saw the headlines. And they immediately created their own conclusions. But according to Debbie, the reality was very different. The transcript explains that she received an $8 million settlement and a house as part of the agreement. Critics immediately portrayed this as a transaction. A sale. An exchange of parental rights for money. Debbie has consistently rejected that interpretation. She insisted the financial arrangements were not about selling children. They were about ending an exhausting chapter of public scrutiny and allowing everyone involved to move forward. Most importantly, she believed Prince and Paris would remain exactly where they belonged. With Michael, the person she trusted, the person she believed loved them more than anything else in the world. That trust would soon face its greatest test. Because in the years that followed, Michael Jackson became the target of some of the most serious allegations and legal battles of his life. And many people assumed Debbie would turn against him. After all, they were divorced. Their relationship had ended. And prosecutors believed she might become a valuable witness. What happened next surprised almost everyone. When Michael faced his highly publicized 2005 trial, Debbie was called to testify. Observers expected damaging revelations. Critics expected explosive accusations. The media prepared for dramatic headlines. Instead, Debbie defended him. Firmly, directly, and without hesitation. According to the transcript, prosecutors appeared to believe Debbie could help undermine Michael's credibility. But her testimony had the opposite effect. She presented herself as someone who still trusted him, someone who still believed in him, and someone unwilling to support narratives she felt were untrue. That moment became one of the most surprising chapters in the entire story, because it revealed something many people hadn't considered. The divorce had ended the marriage. It hadn't ended the loyalty. It hadn't ended the friendship. And it certainly hadn't erased the trust she had placed in him as a father. For supporters of Michael Jackson, Debbie's testimony became one of the strongest defenses they could point to. For critics, it became another source of debate. But regardless of perspective, one thing became clear. Debbie Rowe was not interested in rewriting history. She was not interested in revenge. And she was not interested in joining attacks against the man she once helped build a family with. Then, in 2009, everything changed forever. A phone call. A hospital. A tragedy that shocked the world. And suddenly Debbie found herself confronting a reality she had never imagined. Michael Jackson was gone. And the consequences of that loss would transform the lives of Prince, Paris, and everyone connected to the Jackson family. A phone call. A hospital. A tragedy that shocked the world. And suddenly Debbie found herself confronting a reality she had never imagined. Michael Jackson was gone. For millions of fans around the world, June 25, 2009, remains one of those days people never forget. People remember where they were, what they were doing, and how they reacted when the news broke. For Debbie Rowe, however, the tragedy wasn't a headline. It wasn't breaking news. It was deeply personal. Because regardless of how unconventional their relationship had been, Michael had been one of the most important people in her life. The world immediately focused on the superstar, the icon, the performer, the legend. Debbie's attention went somewhere else. To Prince, to Paris, and to the devastating reality that two children had suddenly lost their father. According to the transcript, Debbie watched as the Jackson family entered one of the most painful periods in its history. The media frenzy became overwhelming. Television coverage never stopped. Reporters surrounded every location connected to Michael. Rumors spread constantly. Speculation dominated headlines. And in the middle of all that chaos stood two grieving children. For years, Debbie had largely remained outside the spotlight. Now circumstances were forcing her back into public attention. And nowhere was that more emotional than during Michael Jackson's memorial service. Millions watched as family members struggled to process the loss. But one moment stood above all others. Paris Jackson's heartbreaking tribute to her father. Her emotional words instantly became one of the most memorable moments of the entire memorial. According to the transcript, Debbie later reflected on watching Paris speak about Michael as the best father she could have imagined. For many viewers, that moment carried enormous weight. Not because it ended every debate, but because it came directly from someone who knew Michael not as a celebrity, but as a father. The world saw a superstar. Paris saw Dad. And for Debbie, hearing those words was deeply emotional. Because they confirmed everything she had believed for years. That fatherhood had been the most important role in Michael's life. Not performing. Not touring. Not fame. Fatherhood. Yet even after Michael's death, the controversies didn't disappear. If anything, some became even larger. New documentaries emerged. Old allegations resurfaced. Media debates intensified. And public arguments continued. For many people, Michael Jackson remained one of the most polarizing figures in entertainment history. But throughout all of those discussions, Debbie's position remained remarkably consistent. She continued describing the Michael she knew. The man she had worked beside. The friend she had trusted. And the father she had watched with Prince in Paris. According to the transcript, her message never changed. She wanted people to look beyond sensational headlines and remember the human being behind them. That message resonated strongly with many fans, especially those who felt Michael's personal life had often been overshadowed by controversy. For supporters, Debbie represented someone with first-hand knowledge. Someone who had witnessed private moments the public never saw. Someone whose perspective carried unique weight. Of course, not everyone agreed. Critics continued questioning various aspects of Michael's life and legacy. The debates remained intense. And they continue today. But regardless of where people stand, Debbie's role in Michael Jackson's story is impossible to ignore. Because she wasn't merely an observer. She was part of the story itself. The woman who helped him become a father. The woman who stood by him during major legal battles. And the woman who continued defending her memories long after he was gone. Meanwhile, another challenge was beginning to emerge. The future of Prince in Paris. As they grew older, they faced enormous pressure. Every public appearance generated attention. Every interview generated headlines. And every decision attracted scrutiny. Being Michael Jackson's children meant living under a microscope few people could fully understand. Debbie watched all of it unfold. And according to many observers, her concern increasingly shifted toward protecting the well-being of her children rather than revisiting old controversies. Because the world wasn't just discussing Michael anymore. It was discussing the next generation. Prince, Paris, and eventually BG. The children Michael had loved so fiercely. But according to many Jackson family observers, the most surprising chapter of Debbie's story was still ahead. Because years after walking away from the spotlight, years after surrendering parental rights, and years after the world assumed that chapter had ended, Debbie would slowly find her way back into the lives of Prince in Paris. A reunion that few people saw coming. And a development that would reveal just how complicated, emotional, and deeply human this family story truly was. A reunion that few people saw coming. And a development that revealed just how complicated, emotional, and deeply human this family story truly was. Because despite everything that happened, the divorce, the custody arrangements, the media criticism, the legal battles, and the years of separation, one thing never completely disappeared. The bond between Debbie Rowe and her children. For a long time, many people assumed that chapter of the story was over. The headlines made it seem that way. The public perception suggested that way. And critics often portrayed Debbie as someone who had permanently walked away. But real life is rarely that simple. Families evolve. Relationships change. And time has a way of healing wounds that once seemed impossible to overcome. According to numerous reports over the years, Debbie gradually rebuilt connections with Prince in Paris as they grew older. For many observers, that development was deeply meaningful. Because it demonstrated that family relationships cannot always be understood through court documents, tabloid headlines, or public assumptions. Sometimes the truth is far more personal, far more complicated, and far more emotional. As Prince and Paris matured, they began creating their own identities, their own careers, their own voices, and their own understanding of the extraordinary family history they inherited. For Debbie, watching that process unfold carried a unique emotional weight. Because she wasn't simply watching celebrity children grow up. She was watching the children she helped bring into the world. The children Michael had loved so fiercely. and the children whose lives would forever be connected to one of the most famous people in history. Yet through all the years, one subject continued following Debbie everywhere she went. Michael Jackson. No matter how much time passed, people kept asking the same question. What was he really like? Not the performer. Not the icon. Not the global superstar. The man. The father. The friend. The human being behind the headlines. And according to the transcript, Debbie's answer has remained remarkably consistent for decades. She describes a man who desperately wanted to be understood. A man who often felt isolated by fame. A man who carried emotional wounds from childhood. And a man whose greatest happiness came from his children. Whether people agree with that portrayal or not, it is the version of Michael Jackson Debbie has defended repeatedly. Not just once. Not just during one interview. But throughout years of public scrutiny. That's why many fans find her perspective so compelling. Because her story never dramatically changed. She never suddenly reversed course. She never transformed into a bitter former spouse. And she never seemed interested in profiting from attacking Michael's memory. Instead, she continued telling the same basic story. A story about friendship, trust, parenthood, and sacrifice. For supporters of Michael Jackson, Debbie's testimony became an important piece of his legacy. Not because it answers every question. Not because it settles every debate. But because it offers a rare glimpse into the private life of someone the world rarely saw clearly. A glimpse from someone who knew him long before many of the biggest controversies unfolded. Someone who witnessed moments cameras never captured. And someone who remained connected to his story long after his death. Meanwhile, Michael Jackson's legacy continues to grow. His music still reaches new generations. His influence still shapes artists around the world. And his name remains one of the most recognized in entertainment history. Yet alongside the records, the awards, and the achievements, another legacy remains. Prince, Paris, and Biggie. The children he loved above everything else. According to Debbie, that was always the part of the story that mattered most. Not the headlines. Not the scandals. Not the endless speculation. The children. Because when all the noise faded away, that's what Michael cared about. That's what made him happiest. And that's the memory Debbie continues encouraging people to remember. The father. Not just the legend. The man. Not just the myth. And perhaps that's why her words continue attracting attention all these years later. Because behind one of the most famous entertainers who ever lived was a deeply personal story about friendship, family, and a dream that finally came true. A dream called fatherhood. What do you think? Did Debbie Rowe help reveal a side of Michael Jackson that the public rarely got to see? Do you believe Michael's greatest achievement was his music career, or the family he built? And what part of Debbie's story surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more Michael Jackson stories, celebrity history, entertainment documentaries, and untold Hollywood stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.